Welcome to Commercial Kitchen Chronicles, the original food service equipment repair podcast built by technicians for technicians. Whether you're on the front lines of repair, keeping the kitchen running smoothly, or just passionate about the food service repair industry, this podcast is your go-to source for expert insights, tech tips, and real stories from the field. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Commercial Kitchen Chronicles. Tonight, Jason Latimer is joining me, and we have very special guest, Taylor Lomberk. Hopefully I said that right. I'm terrible with names. If you don't know, Jason's in a different role. He's not a technician anymore. He's in a facilities manager role, and he knows Taylor from that role, and we're going to get all into it today and talk about everything facilities managers. It's kind of a lot of us in the restaurant industry know what a facilities manager is, but we probably don't know exactly what their role is or what they expect from us, and we're going to cover that tonight. So welcome to the show, everybody.
Hey, welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you on, Taylor. So how's your week so far? How's your day going today?
Well, it's another day. The cold weather being in the Northeast brings lots of interesting jobs that come about, from those lovely pipe bursts to, I don't know, I had one today that a parking lot is sinking. I think that's what I love about this job, is it's something new every day.
Absolutely. I've been seeing those emails about pipe bursting and whatnot. Some I saw were resolved pretty quickly.
Yeah,
so I thought I was surprised. I thought it would be something a lot crazier if and this is sprinkler systems and the ceilings bursting or
Yeah, some of them are sprinkler systems. Some of them are just regular, water pipes that are not PVC yet. And some of them, we had some HVAC condensation lines, I think, burst at one point. So it's just this cold weather I'm over it already.
Yeah.
We're only about halfway through that. You got a little bit to go.
Jersey, right?
Yeah. So I'm based in Central Jersey, about 45 minutes north of Philly. So
how big is your region? What states and
So I have about, I believe, 5 states. So I do New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. So 6 states.
Beautiful.
So all the cold ones.
So how long have you been in facilities?
So I've been in facilities about 14 years now, and that makes me feel really old.
And I haven't been in 14 months.
Yeah, it's about 14 years I've been in this industry.
Yeah. Did you start out in hospitality, where food and whatnot, or was it
So no, believe it or not, I started out with everything. I worked retail locations, doctor's offices, car dealerships, preschools. And then I worked, one of my jobs was we had a big client, and it was a restaurant, and something about the urgency of the restaurant kind of got me addicted. And, retail stores, yes, you have some plumbing issues and you have some HVAC issues, but when you have a restaurant, there's just so much more. And to me, it's a challenge. So I'm like, oh, I like this. This is like challenge accepted. All right, I'm ready to go.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Is it a night and day from that to food?
Yeah, it really is, because the thing is that you have a toilet that's not working in a retail location. Yes, obviously it's important, especially if it's a customer, used toilet. But more than likely you have at least 2 to 3 other toilets, depending on the size of the restroom. When you have a restaurant, it's not just the toilet issue that you have to work on. It is no hot water, or a hot water not being the proper temperature. Walk-in freezers down, walk-in refrigerators, ovens, kettles, all of this fun stuff that keeps a restaurant going, that people who are not in the industry in any way, whether it's, a technician or even down to like a waiter or a waitress, you don't realize how much goes into running a restaurant.
Yeah. Okay. So what got you into facilities originally? Was it something you knew what you wanted, you were going for it, or did you mistakenly end up in here,
Uh-oh.
Yes, when I was no one, that is never how it happens. I think this is one of my favorite stories. So I was a pharmacy technician for about 4 years and went to school to be a pharmacist. I got 6 weeks in, financial aid said no. So I'm like, well, I still want to do something medical. So I went to school for medical assisting. I went to school at night and I was a pharmacy tech during the day. And my hours, I was working full time, 40 hours, and they cut my hours at the pharmacy to 11. And I had just bought my first car. Oh. And I'm like, okay, well, I have 7 months until I graduate school and then I can get into my field. But what am I going to do? How am I going to pay my bills? So there was an office in the school that in the same building that I went to school for medical assisting, and they were hiring and I had no idea what they did. But I was talking to a woman outside, during my break, and she's like, yeah, we're a facilities maintenance company. I go, you're a what company? And she's like, yeah, if stores call and they have toilet issues or electrical issues, they call us. She goes, just send me your resume and we'll bring you in. I'm like, okay. So they bring me in for an interview. They explain it to me. And I'm like, customer service, I could do this. But I said to them, it's only going to be 6-7 months before I leave. I want to be completely transparent with you. I don't, Yeah. And I got the job and I took it. And I didn't understand it at first because I was going from pharmacy, which was medications and prior authorizations, to toilet clogs and circuit breakers. Very, very different. And it took me about 3 months before I really liked it. And I really enjoyed it. It was different because I didn't know what I was doing and I was determined to know everything.
Yeah.
So, of course, I had to swallow my pride a little bit. I had to talk to technicians and be like, I need you to explain exactly what you're doing. I need you, and I had them break it down. And come time, 6 months later, I'm getting ready to leave to go to school, to graduate. I do my externship and I hate it. I just spent 18 months going to school for medical assisting and I hated it. I was miserable during my externship. So I tell my parents, I go, guys, I love you, but I'm not doing this. I don't like it. I want to stay at my job. And my mother and father were livid. They were like, you just went to school for 18 months. You did a 320-hour externship, and now you don't want to do this? I'm like, yes. They were not happy. I then come to realize that there is a whole world besides this one company out there. And I switched companies and I made moves and I worked for different clients and things. And I gradually moved up and I just loved it. Right. And I networked and I made lots of contacts. And then eventually I moved over to the client side. And I was with one company for 2 years. And then I moved to my current company. And it's really funny now because my dad had knee replacement surgery back in September. And anytime I was there visiting him at the hospital, because he was there for a little while, a nurse would walk in or his roommate's family would walk in. And the first thing he would do is he would go, this is my daughter, Taylor. She's a facilities manager. And now that's the biggest pride. I think one of the greatest parts of my job is seeing how proud my dad is, or just hearing my dad want to hear about the jobs. He'll sit there and he'll be like, so what happened? Did the parking lot sink? What's the follow-up for that? It's like his soap opera. It's like his stories. He gets so involved in it.
I love that.
It's the greatest thing. And honestly, it's so funny because my parents went from what are you doing to, oh my God, I am so proud of you. We cannot believe that you made something of this and you ran with it. So, awesome. It's really awesome to see how far I've come in this 14 years.
Oh my goodness. So obviously in facilities, probably male dominated. So have you, I don't always shoot over to anything in regards to gender or anything like that, but it's the elephant in the room. There are more of us than you ladies. Can you talk about some of your challenges getting into this, trying to find your way, trying to, try to make your mark and stand out on your own?
It's really funny that I ended up in a primarily male dominated field because when I was growing up, my mother was also in a primarily male dominated field. She was in aviation, and but she was on the private side.
Oh, she froze again.
She froze?
Yep, she froze.
So for many, many years when I was growing up, but she also worked on the account, the books and the accounting and everything. And I remember I used to shadow her a lot, and I would see men come in, these pilots come in, and they would try talking to her like she was just some receptionist. And she would just spit pure facts of like FAA regulations or anything like that in their faces, and they would just be speechless. And I don't think she actually realized how much that affected me, because I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world watching my mom leave these men speechless time after time. And I think when I got this job and I realized that first job and I realized that it was a male dominated field, I think it inspired me even more to learn more, because I got my chance to leave men speechless. And I had to suck it up in the beginning, like I said before, and I had to talk to technicians who they were plumbers and carpentry and, handymen who just thought who they were because they've been doing this for however many years. And there's this 20-year-old girl on the phone going, okay, well, how do you change a toilet? And I was being completely serious because I didn't know. And I would ask those questions and go on YouTube and Google. But what I don't think a lot of people realized was that I have a really weird, specifically good memory. But also I was writing everything down, and I would think about questions to ask. And I created a facilities Bible, as I call it. And I don't have it in my office now, but it was a 3-ring binder of all of my questions, pricing, how to do different things. And I use that journal and that Bible as I've gone through my career. When technicians would be like, oh, I want to do this. And I'll be like, well, no, you can't do that. How come you don't, use this type of snake instead of that snake? Or why don't you do this instead of that? And hearing them be completely speechless and go, oh, well, I didn't think about that. It's like, boom, it's so important for women, I think, because luckily it's starting to become a little bit more. There's a lot of females breaking into this industry, which I love. I love seeing women technicians, especially women owning companies that are plumbing companies, refrigeration companies. It's amazing. That whole women-owned business label that's on a lot of companies, it's a great thing. And it just shows that women in this industry, they don't always start out as powerful as they are, but I think a lot of people undermine them. And then when they turn around and they spit pure facts, it's the greatest part of my job, honestly.
Some of the smartest people I've dealt with in this industry, HVAC or refrigeration or kitchen stuff, has been women. We've got a pretty good friend that's actually in the audience, Megan. She's with Mechanical Environments. They're a specialized HVAC company out in Denver area. They take care of grow operations. That's all they do. It's like
I talked to Taylor about that earlier. Yeah.
And I heard Jason told me about that. I was like, that is genius.
She is super smart, and she's out there every day getting it. Her and Matt are out there killing it. So I'm sure she's going to love hearing you praise women owners and women out there in the trades. We really appreciate that.
Oh yeah, I remember when I first started with my current company, and we did location tours, and one of my other FMs had kind of told us like little types of tricks to when the fryer's not working properly, you twist the filter and you clean it, and you have to remember. And I was in a location and they were like, we have to enter a work order because the fryer is not filtering properly. And I was like, well, hold on. And there I am. I get down and I look, and it was dirty. And I went and I cleaned it, and everything started working. And it was something so small, but they were like, oh my God, thank you. I felt like that was the biggest win ever. And it's so funny because I constantly tell myself, part of me wants to learn how to fix equipment, because I feel like for a facility manager, especially one who loves to watch costs and who pays attention, and being in the Northeast, obviously with things being so much more expensive than the rest of the country, if I can do something super simple like change a capacitor on an HVAC unit for a company, I'll get on the roof, I'll do it. Like, I'm one of those facility managers, and I think that's what sets me aside from other female facilities. That if you're going to be a female in this industry, you have to not be afraid to get your hands dirty. You know, like, I feel like you have to be able to get on your hands and knees and scrub floors and change filters and do that stuff, because that just shows that you're not expecting any special treatment. Like, you just get in and that's the job and that's what you do.
Yeah, I would say, practicing it and understanding what you're doing doesn't mean you have to do it all the time, but when someone you can follow behind people. I do maintenance visits at all my stores. If I see a store in my area and it's with our company, I'll go introduce myself as, hey, you mind if I do like a quick hour walk around? I go jump on the roof, I go check filters, look for dates, check the belts, make sure that what we're paying for in regards to like preventative maintenance has actually been done. But outside of me not understanding how to do it first, I wouldn't be able to know how to hold anyone else accountable. So let's segue with your those are great points. So let me ask you about and a lot of the questions I wanted to ask you, aside from it relating to you, I'm also speaking to the audience where there's men and women who might not know much about facilities management, especially restaurant and hospitality facilities management. So I want to segue into what is your typical day-to-day responsibilities as a facility manager is?
Well, emails. That's a very big thing.
I'm horrible at that.
It changes every day. Yes, there is some repetitive items of the day, but it can always change. It could be a day where, yesterday I, sat at my desk and I was literally on the phone from the time I sat at my desk at like 8:30 all the way until 2:30, when I had to step away from my desk to run to a location to take pictures. And then I was on the phone in the parking lot. I was on between Teams meetings, phone calls, text messages. It was, going to locations. I love to go to my locations. I think one of my favorite things as a facility manager is being in the locations and letting the teams, the operations teams, see you and understand that you're there to help them. But my day-to-day there, like I said, I could have days like that. And then I could have days where my phone does not ring at all. And I have no Teams meetings, and I have 20 emails that are literally updating NTEs on my service channel, and that's it. So I love those days, because those are the days that I can get like deep dive work done. But my day-to-day, it really does change. It depends on the weather, and there's so many factors that can depend on how a day goes.
That's awesome. So obviously I didn't go to school per se, originally thinking I was going into being a facilities manager. What kind of education do you need to be a facilities manager? And are there resources out there outside of going to some major college to get brushed up and educated and, know enough to be dangerous and get out there and start this?
Well, if you're going to be a technician, obviously one of the biggest things you want to do, there are some companies out there, and I believe there's a company in Georgia, and I am trying to remember their name, but they actually will go to high schools and they'll go to those fairs if you want to be a technician, and they'll source you right from there. And they put you through schooling themselves. They hire you and they teach you that way. If you're looking to be a technician, look for those trade schools. If you want to be on the office side of things, whether you want to be in restaurants directly or you just want to break into facilities somehow, some way, I would say your best bet is experience. There are colleges out there that do have facilities management degrees, but I do not think they would be able to give you the amount of experience and knowledge that you would get hands-on. I don't think that the hours of on-call that I have done in my time, and the snowstorms and the hurricanes and everything that I've learned would be able to be taught in a college class or out of a textbook. So for anybody looking to break into the industry, obviously if you're watching or listening to this show, connect with myself, Pat, Jason, anybody, because we can absolutely help and show you the way. For me, I think if you're looking to get into facilities, I am pro third party vendor. And I say I'm pro third party vendor because it gives you a lot of opportunities of companies, whether it be retail, restaurant, doctor's offices, things like that. And I think that's how I came across my niche of restaurants. So if you're looking to get in, I would recommend doing that. Or if you want to focus on, I really want to learn more about electrician, look to see about working with an electrician or answering phones or something like that. Like I said, while there is college degrees out there, experience definitely is the best way to go.
All right. Pat, you have any questions?
I remember when Jason, we talked for months before he made the jump, and he was trying to find the right fit for him. And, it was something he dealt with in the industry as far as facilities managers, but something he thought that he could really give it a shot. And I think he's probably doing a really phenomenal job over there. He loves going to the stores. I know he's traveled to some new openings and stuff like that. And he'd give me a call or a text like, hey, I got this up and doing this. What do you think it is? Who should I call? What can I do? And, but I think he's found his home over there, and he's really excelling at it. So I could see people enjoying that sector of it. You get a wide variety, just like we do, actually in the field, but you get the opportunity to do some other things too. So that's really cool.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about expectations versus reality. So from a facilities manager's perspective, what are some of the common misunderstandings and unrealistic expectations from restaurant owners or staff? This can be a contentious one. This is your opinion from your experience, Taylor.
That everything is not happening fast enough. They think that if they call an HVAC tech, that they'll be there within, like it's Domino's, 30 minutes or it's free. I think another thing that a lot of restaurant owners and managers don't understand are lead times, especially with HVAC and refrigeration equipment, and I've had to explain to so many different managers the past few weeks that currently certain HVAC equipment is only going to possibly get worse because of the changeover of the Freon. So that lead time is, they're not making as many of the 410As and they're now moving to the R32 or whatever it's changing over to. So, lead times are a big thing. Quotes, I remember when I first got into the industry, we were always told we had to get the client the quote within 24 to 48 hours. And living in a pre-COVID world, unfortunately, we're still not. Sometimes it could take 72 to 96 hours before clients are getting, vendors are getting proposals to us because they're waiting on suppliers. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I really wish they can understand is Rome was not built in a day. No matter how urgent things are, I can't make a heat exchanger arrive overnight as much as I would love to do it.
Yeah, that was a huge thing, especially during COVID. I had a certain chain customer. They bought their own rooftop units. We installed it, but they waited for a rooftop unit for over a year. Luckily it was a kitchen unit, so they didn't really need the heat in the winter because everything's pretty hot in there. And they had a makeup air bringing in hot air, had a heater in it. But in the summer, we were renting portable air conditioners, like big, giant industrial ones, and setting them up and running ducts in the ceiling and dumping them in the kitchen because it was like 130 degrees in that kitchen and nothing would run right. And then your employees are miserable. So lead times are they're a lot better than they were, but they can still be pretty rough sometimes.
Yeah, some companies, I think like Lennox, they already bit the bullet and went through this. So they're on the end side, or the over the molehill here of what they had to go through to repurpose all their stuff. And they went through a long wait time, and they caught hell for it. But now that they're kind of catching up, now the other companies who are that are now starting to do their A2L conversions are going to go through the same thing.
Yep.
And some companies just took the pain, and they're going to be ahead of others, and then others have to do the same. I keep seeing ads about, we stocked up on 410A through the end of 2025. So get. And Lord knows how long they were sitting on those, and that's my thing about people installing equipment that a customer might have been sitting on, or a GC might have stockpiled somewhere. You end up getting units that are dead on arrival with a busted coil and whatnot, or it's got dents in it, all kinds of stuff like that. So next question: what do you wish restaurant service providers, technicians, equipment suppliers better understood about the needs of a facilities team?
I wish that they understood how much some of the items truly impact operations. My previous company, we had ovens that went up to 500 degrees, and they were consistently running from about 5 o'clock in the morning until about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And so if one of our HVAC units had an issue and wasn't working, and it's the summer, we've got 500 degree air being pushed through the kitchen, and you're not understanding how much that unit being down truly affects my team, my operations team, how much it's an OSHA issue. I just wish sometimes that I think service providers can also be a little bit more speedy. I think sometimes that's why a lot of companies will sometimes, depending on how big the account is, they almost put like a dedicated person on the accounts just so that they make sure that they're getting the attention they need. But I think that's truly the biggest thing. I think that they just really need to understand how much whatever the item is that's down or broken or needs attention, how exactly it affects how things run.
Excellent.
So me as a technician, I know, I've been doing this almost 20 years, and I know restaurants. I know a lot of restaurants, different brands, different concepts, and I have a pretty good idea of, what they can get away with out for a day, and but I try to take care of my customers as far as like, hey, they're going to need this, today, or, hey, this can wait till tomorrow. If we got to get a part, they can wait a couple of days. So I try to prioritize as a technician. Now, not every technician is going to do that. You got guys come to work, fix stuff, and go home. They don't care. They just do what's on their board, and they don't care. But I can understand that fully. Some customers, only have one or two ovens, and they bake everything. It's like, how do you function with one oven as a bakery? I'm like, I don't get it. But I mean, in those situations, us as an industry, we got to be prepared to take care of our customers. We got to have go boxes that are kitted for that particular equipment or that particular customer, like you said, and then try to send the guy that's best suited for that equipment and that location. So.
Yeah, sometimes it just happens, and a lot of times, even being, doing this as long as I can, a restaurant manager can say, hey, I've got this issue, XYZ. And I call the technician and I say, hey, I think it's this. And the technician arrives on site and it is that, but it's also something else. And he can only fix one thing, and it's very difficult. But yes, there are technicians who love what they do and they put their whole heart into each job. And then there are absolutely technicians who just are there, do what they got to do, and they get out.
Yeah, I think communication has a lot to do with it. Like Pat saying, hey, can you get through this? If you don't communicate at all, all people have are their thoughts and their their suspicions of why aren't they here? Did they pick another customer over us? What's going on? We ordered this already. We put this quote in a while ago. So what's your best? What would you expect for collaboration with service providers? What's your ideal working relationship?
For me, I'm a big phone person when it comes to my vendors and my service providers. So if I see that communication's not great, or service has been slipping, or we've got technicians out and we're having a lot of recalls on specific products or specific items, I pick up the phone, and if they're local, I will say, hey, listen, I'm going to come to the office. Let's sit down, let's chat, I make it informal. I'm not the type of person. For me, it takes a lot to fire a service provider. So I'm about, let's talk it out. Let's have the open conversation. I want to hear things from your side. Tell me your side. And I think one of the reasons why I am that way is because I came from the vendor side. So I have more of a pro vendor mentality. One of the things, again, that I love about third parties is, oh, you don't like Jim's plumbing? Okay, that's fine. We can send another plumbing company to the client. But when you're not a third party, that makes, it makes things a little difficult, because then you have to find, well, who was the exact technician that was on site? Do we not want that technician back? Well, you can't send Bob back to my store anymore. But it's having those conversations. And sometimes they're not easy, but ultimately you have to, as a facility manager, decide, is the relationship and the history with this specific service provider strong enough that you can get over this issue, whatever it is?
So you got to build some goodwill if you want to maintain those relationships, then, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So there's no worse feeling than being a technician that's fostered and developed a good relationship with a customer, secured that account, and then someone else goes in there and they don't do a good job. They mess up, and then, that client calls somebody else. It's like, man, I worked my butt off to get that account, get that customer, make them happy. And they were thrilled with me, and then someone else ruins it. So, I mean, it may not be that they ruined it, but that's just what, you can think, but it's a relationship you want to build. So I can see it.
Right. And I know what that's like from being on that side of building a relationship. When I was on the vendor side, one of the biggest things that I was the person that the salespeople would bring a client in, and they would be like, we're going to do great. This is going to be your account manager, Taylor. She's going to give you everything. And they start, the client starts small, and I build their trust, and they give us all this work. And then there's a new account that has to come in. So they pass this account that I built to somebody else who doesn't do a great job and ends up ruining it or making a mess of it. And then they have to give it back to me, and they go, Taylor, we need you to fix this. So I get what that's like. You spend time and you build your relationship with your client or your restaurant manager. And sometimes, like you said before, there are technicians who don't put as much love into their job as others do.
So Taylor has her experience and her love for the type of provider she loves. She's mentioned national accounts and third party. I'm actually opposite, and it probably has to do with the fact that all my stores, and have over 100 of them, they're in one state, right? She's got multiple states. So I think that works really good for her. Me personally, coming from a service company and being an in-house technician, I personally, when I have an issue locally, but I have to call an HQ across the country or out of state, I have a problem with that personally. That's just me. I honestly want to know the name of the technician. I want to know he lives locally. I want to know there's a brick and mortar, at least a branch in my area or in my state. I want to be able to kick in a door and hold someone accountable and talk to somebody. I want to say, I know exactly where they are. I know where you sleep. Not to be creepy, but that's my thing. I like local companies, and again, I don't mind if you're a big company, as long as you have a brick and mortar branch in my area, and I know that the people aren't, and it is hard because you build a relationship with that company, and when it starts to slack or act up, it's like, ugh, I have so much. She would probably call it eggs in one basket, and that is the downside. It's like, all right, well, I got to take the good to bad with here. I can't just say, hey, send a different sub. I don't personally care for subs in a lot of instances. If I hear that someone was in a store with a Home Depot shirt, I'll lose it. It's, needs to be customer facing, and that's not always the case. But yeah, so the next thing I want to talk about is tips. So let's give, us being facilities manager, what would be your a tip for the stores, something that you recommend that they do that could behoove?
I would say communicate with your facility manager.
Yeah.
I think, and it brings me back, and it was funny when you had asked me a previous question about what you wanted restaurateurs to understand. And one of the things that I say, and it applies to this too, is just because it's on YouTube doesn't mean that you could do it too. Don't think just because you can't replace a toilet, don't attempt to snake your own drain. I have horror stories about people trying to replace light bulbs for a fire department and $2,000 later worth of fines. I had to be the one. Talk to your facility manager, have that relationship, but that's not just on the restaurants, that's on the facility managers as well. Whether you build a relationship with the direct, the partners or the managers or operating managers at your locations, or your district managers, your venture partners, whatever they are. And that's, constant communication, because the more that the facility manager reaches out to those restaurateurs, the more that those restaurateurs know, I don't have to deal with this anymore. There's a person who's here for that. And I can't tell you guys how many times, I think I said it on Monday. I'm like, dude, I literally said to one of my managers, I'm like, dude, I have a purpose. Call me. You don't want to deal with it. I was like, focus on operations. I tell them all the time, focus on operations, focus on making sales, bringing in cash flow so we can make that R&M budget a little bit higher. We can plan those big projects that won't be considered capital, but it's okay because we can create a smart plan to get these jobs done that you want to get done. And I think that communication and leaning on your facilities team is, as a restaurateur, it's a big thing. And a lot of companies don't exactly, I don't know if they don't have that type of mentality or the ability to have that relationship because there's just so many locations. But that's my biggest tip is if you have a facilities team, utilize them.
Absolutely. I love that. My tip of the day for restaurants, and not just mine, but any restaurant. And I always talk about this because I was a technician, and I always go off of what Rich Malachi's little quote back in the day. And Rich, right? You
love Rich.
He was
I hope he's going to be at RIFMA in a couple of weeks. I'm super excited.
You just told everyone we're going to be at RIFMA.
It's okay. It's all right. Listen, I'm already getting phone calls, everything. Yes, I will be at RIFMA. I usually wear a bright pink blazer one of the days, so you'll find me on the floor.
You heard it here, people. Taylor and I will be at RIFMA in about 2 weeks. So my tip of the day, being a technician and echoing what Rich Malachi says, that technicians, there's a shortage. And they're not idling at the corner waiting for someone to call them, So my thing is Fridays. I learned really quickly that on Fridays, people put in work orders, and then I get emails and they're saying, can you please escalate this? Escalating it as if the call was days ago, not a few minutes ago. So my big tip for that, I've learned to just get over it. They're going to, obviously, you need to put a call in when you put a call in. But my tip is that if you got to put a call in on a Friday going into the weekend, always put OT approved. A lot of managers, a lot of restaurants assume because it's a 10 in the morning, 11 in the morning on a Friday, if you put a call in, that it's not OT. No, everybody had their calls scheduled the night before or a week before. So no one starts the day idling, waiting. Everyone already has an 8-hour worth of work for the day. So my recommendation to all restaurants on a Friday, no matter how early it is, if you're putting a call in, say it's OT. This does two things. It makes sure that if somebody shows up, most likely they'll show up at the end of the day because everyone had work to do. But when they show up, most likely that technician that shows up is also working through the weekend. So if you don't put OT approved and you just get a regular Joe Schmo who shows up to do the work, and they can't fix it or they need to get a part, they're going to say something like, well, I don't have the part. I'm going to order it. I'll be back tomorrow. That is most likely not true because they don't do the scheduling. So you won't see them tomorrow, and then you will be calling, and then you're not going to get what you need. But if you put OT, most likely the person who shows up is the person who's on call for the whole weekend. And if they say they're going to be tomorrow or Sunday, the number you call is going to reach them. So my recommendation is always put OT. It might cost more, but it does guarantee a little bit more better service, and that you're going to get the person that you're going to want to see tomorrow who says they're going to be there and actually can be there and does have access to after hours, getting to the warehouse, getting additional parts and things of that nature. And then the other thing I want to say, I'll add another one. If it's in the middle of the night on the weekend, unless it's an absolute emergency, like your walk-in is completely down, things of that nature, remember when you call for an OT job, there's a 50-50 chance that technician is going to come out there and not be able to fix it, right? It's a chance you take. The technician, if it's OT, is going to be door to door. That means if I live 3 hours away, my clock starts from when I leave my house, when I get to you, to try to diagnose and repair your equipment. Whether I can fix it or not, the clock stays running until I get back home. The difference between OT on the weekend and working on the weekend or at night on the weekday is that on the weekends and nights, there is no resources, like there is no technical support to call on. There's parts houses that aren't open. The parts houses you do have to open. Most of the people who have to come down to those have to drive down to turn the computer on to determine whether or not the part is even in the store. But that's after that you agree to a $200, $300 fee to open that warehouse. And all I'm saying is that if you can go till the weekday, I would wait till the weekday. I would put the call in and say it could wait till the weekday, so it's in their system and it's queued up so that they understand it's urgent and that you're willing to wait. But those are things that I recommend to restaurants. Always put OT on a Friday, and if it's after hours, make sure it's something that you need them to come out. So those are just some tips.
And to go off that, yes. I also as a restaurateur, if you have a refrigeration or HVAC issue that cannot wait, I would also say if you do have a technician out and they say that they can't get the part until Monday, I would always ask, if it's truly an emergency, can we pay to open the parts house? Yeah. Now, yes, I have paid money in the past to open Johnstone's, or I've paid to open Ferguson Plumbing Supplies. Does it cost you an arm and a leg? It might cost you, I think at one point, it was like $500 for somebody to come there and give the part. It was a holiday weekend too. But at the same time, their walk-in freezer was completely down and they had just gotten a truck the day before. If that didn't happen, if we didn't pay that $500, they would have lost almost $7,000 worth of product. So it is, I'm not saying that it can happen all the time, but as a restaurateur, talk to your FM or talk to the technician, see if it's a possibility. The worst thing that we can tell you is no, it's not, but at least we ask the question to see if we can remedy the issue over the weekends.
Good.
I got one for you. So I've never actually asked Jason this. So ice machines. I had a customer. They were famous for calling on Sunday for ice machines. And they were 2.5 hours away. And the ice machine was empty on Sunday, which means it was down on Saturday, and they just emptied it out and didn't catch it. And I always told them, I was like, look, even if I can come out today and get this thing running, it's still going to be 24 hours before you're full of ice again. Are you willing to pay for me to drive out at 7 o'clock on a Sunday night, double time for 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours there, 2.5 hours back, or however long I was there to get this thing running, or do you want to wait till tomorrow? Oh, it's got to go today. I'm like, it's cheaper for you to go buy 500 pounds of ice than it is to pay me this. And we don't care. You're going to come. I'm like, what sense does that make? And it drove me nuts. It seemed like every time I was on calls, the same customer, same ice machine.
That sounds like a coaching thing where
exactly.
The leadership needs to. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's the thing too. You as the FM or as the facility manager, you need to be sensible about these things. Because honestly, if I would have seen that, I would have been like, go to the local gas station, get a couple bags of ice. It's 7 o'clock at night. You close in a couple of hours anyway. How much ice are people? If people are coming in and asking for bowls of ice, then we've got an issue. But you can get away with a couple of bags of ice for the night and have someone come in the morning. That's definitely, Jason, I agree, a coaching thing.
That was the only thing I did on that. So,
well, we're going to just talk about best practice. I got more off the top of my head. You were mentioning freezer trucks, Taylor. So, Pat, this is a problem. It always has been. Whether I was a service tech telling the store after I finished their walk-in freezer and there was a freezer truck outside and all they're thinking is, he just fixed the walk-in freezer, even though it's 80 degrees in there, I'm going to start loading it. And I say, please give it, 48 hours? 24, at least 24 hours?
Yeah, I'd say 24 at least.
And as soon as I walk out the door, they just start filling it. And then if something happens and if that repair didn't take, I get a phone call back screaming about this is a callback and you lost me all this product. How do you handle that sort of thing, Taylor? Do you tell your stores if they've already rented and paid for a freezer truck and that the repair, a new compressor, a new TXV, a new whatever to fix this walk-in was just done in the middle of the night, if anything, not to just fill the product back into the freezer?
Oh, yeah, no, I tell them at least, depending on when it was done, depending on how low or how high the temperature went on the unit, I'll tell them to give it 12 to 24 hours, simply because I would always tell my locations, let it get to temp and give it 4 hours. If it can maintain temp for 4 to 6 hours, then you can start loading it, but let it get down to the temperature it's supposed to be. And you already paid for the truck. You're not going to get a discount or a refund if you return the truck 4 hours earlier. So you have it, use it. And that's one of the biggest things. And then when I have a district manager or a manager isn't working again. Okay, well, did you fill it like I told you not to? Well, yeah, I needed to. No, you didn't. You had a truck. That's not a warranty. You have to pay. Well, why do I have to pay? And again, one of the hard parts of being an FM is kind of having to point out, restaurant managers' faults. You were given instructions by the technician and the FM and you didn't follow them. And now the repair didn't take and another repair needs to happen. You have to pay for that.
Yeah,
so,
if anything,
I fully tell them.
If anything, an empty box should cool down quicker than a box full of product that needs to get the internal temperature down to the ambient, right? So if you leave it and, several hours later, it stops. If it's a walk-in freezer and it stops, because sometimes some guys are like, oh, it's the compressor when it was the TXV and it stops. And then they run back in there and try to make some adjustments. That was the time to catch it. And then the store could have said something. It's like, hey, let me know if this thing doesn't get down in a certain amount of time, we can come back out. No harm, no foul. We'll just pick back up where we left, But those are best practices kind of things. I probably have 100. I just can't think of a lot right now. So do you have any best practices, Taylor, that you can recommend? I know we've already been going over a few of them. Some pet peeves, things that we can work on.
Best practice, especially when it comes to refrigeration equipment and HVAC equipment with a restaurant, depending on the age of the units, there are some times where where a technician will make a repair and they will install a brand new part. And within a few days, something else will go because you have a brand new piece of equipment part working full speed on a unit that could be 5 to 10 years old or 5 to 7 years old. And unfortunately, that can happen. It's not that the technician didn't do their job correctly or they messed up. It could be something else went. And one of the best practices for me, I think, is to allow the technician to do a full diagnosis of the unit after something goes wrong before you're screaming that you don't want to pay for something because they were just on site. That was one of the biggest things that I did with HVAC units. It was a 17-year-old unit and the compressor failed. And the district manager was like, well, let's just put a new compressor in it. I'm like, why would you do that? No, we're going to replace the unit. Well, I don't want to pay for that. I go, okay, let's put a brand new newborn's heart into an 85-year-old man. How do you think that's going to work? And he goes, what? I go, the compressor is the heart of the unit. Okay. You are putting a brand new compressor in a unit that has been running in all types of weather for 17 years. You are going to burn out the rest of the unit, and then you still have a brand new compressor that can't work anymore.
Facts. You will spring some leaks there. No, that's great. Let's talk about uh, expectations of new service providers and how you'd like communication in regards to notes. I have some providers and I'm trying to, it's our job to teach them how we want things. And one of the big things I talk about, and, we've talked about on the show and with Megan and Matt, is about technical storytelling, about how you write your notes. I'm really big on the fact that I really want to see in my notes who the technician spoke to. I want to see, hey, arrived on site. I hate seeing spoke to MOD because I think it's a cop out because there's multiple shifts in my opinion. I want to know that you spoke to Pat, when you got there. Why? Because there's multiple shifts. And if you say you spoke to an MOD, what shift were you? Who knew you were here, right? Collecting data information. A lot of companies don't write the model serial on there. And I'm just like, hey, I had a conversation recently with someone and I said, hey, you're not putting the model serial. Well, they forget. I was like, well, you recommended this big ticket. And they're like, yeah, I needed it. I was like, well, if you don't put the model serial in there, if you aren't writing down the data information, then in my opinion, you're not being a good partner with me. You're pretty much just saying you're trying to be a parts changer, or you're just trying to sell me something and you're not interested in me understanding what the age of the equipment is so that I can make an informed decision whether to replace or to repair. That's why I'm asking for data information. It's not just because I want to be a stickler and make you write all these numbers. I need you to partner with me and I need you to show me that, yeah, you're here, there's plenty of money and there's plenty of pie to eat, but that you're going to at least give me an opportunity to make an informed decision. And if you're not writing who you spoke to, which shows good customer service, and if you're not writing the model and serial number that gives me an opportunity to determine how old the equipment is and some history on it, then I don't consider that a good partnership. And that's something I've been working with new providers to help them understand how I want communication, because sometimes it's just walked in, it was broken, I fixed it. My first thing I noticed was people saying things like, condenser on the ice machine needs to be replaced. Then I call them and say, hey, I see that. They're like, it's bad. I'm like, the whole condenser? Yeah, it's bad. I'm like, can you tell me what's wrong with it? Well, what do you mean? It's bad. I'm like, is the whole thing under warranty? No. I'm like, can you tell me what's wrong with it so I can make an informed decision? And they're like, oh, well, the receiver is rusted. I'm like, well, how old is it? It's 5 years old. Change the receiver. They're like, oh yeah, we could do that. I can do that. Or walk-ins with evaporator drain pans that are in an acidic environment with the tomatoes and the onions, and there's little holes that spring, and they're putting silicone on the bottom of the pan in this walk-in cooler, and they're like, then they give me a quote to replace the whole evaporator, and I'm like, well, it's the condition of the coil. Oh, it's fine, but the pan is bad. Well, change the pan out. Just the pan. I'm like, yeah, just the pan, guy. It's things like that. Expectations of communication. Do you when you get a new provider, obviously they work with different brands. Do you feel that you need to kind of lay out your expectations and how you want to be communicated with, and in turn, do you ask them, how do you want to be communicated with?
I do. And, one of my biggest things, and this is a very, very big saying in the facilities world, if it's not in the notes, it didn't happen. And yes. It's a big saying. And I'm going to be honest, I never, yes, I was very big on notes, but I was not big on notes until I had a situation where I was on the third party side and I had a job and we were going back and fixing this HVAC unit and respectful of the repairs, and they kept altering the repairs, and we kept having to go out, and it ended up getting to the point of needing a lawsuit where the client tried to bring a lawsuit to us. And my notes and my details and who I spoke with and everything like that is what ended up saving us. And when I have a new vendor, one of the biggest things I do, or a new service provider, I like to have a kickoff call. And that's the biggest thing is I like to have a kickoff call with, whoever the service manager is and whoever. And I say, this is how I like to communicate. When you get a work order in service channel, I want you to not only accept it, but I really want you to say work order received. We will advise on an ETA. I want to have a note in there when you have an ETA. We will be on site tomorrow between 4 and 7 or 11 and 5. When you're on site, I want a note that says techs are on site. We will advise. I expect to, techs were on site. They checked in with manager Rachel. They found a capacitor needing to be replaced. We did not have the correct capacitor on the truck. We'll be running to the shop and returning. I need all of that play-by-play because the thing is that many of the times our operators, they're not checking service channel or they're not checking our facility platform as close as we are. So they're not knowing what's going on. All they're seeing is the technician walking in, the technician walking out, and their HVAC not working. So for me, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to call me and they go, the technician left and it's not working. I have right here, oh yeah, they have a part. This is what's going on. When it comes to models and serial numbers, with quotes, I am the worst with quotes because I nitpick my quotes. I want it broken down. If you can't understand as the service provider what needs to be done, how am I supposed to understand it?
If you can't
articulate.
That's a lot
of times that's where my knowledge came from, was having these providers break down their proposals step by step so I could understand the process. And, model and serial numbers, if you're giving me an HVAC unit that needs a heat exchanger replaced, I need to see that, because I need to make sure. If you tell me that unit is from 2017, I'm going to call you back and I'm going to say, I'm not paying $5 or $6 grand for that heat exchanger, my dude. That's a 10-year warranty. I'm not paying for that. So a lot of times it's, and I'm going to be honest, that's exactly how I'll call them. I'll be like, hey dude, no, my man, that's a 10-year warranty. You better take that off and resubmit that quote. That's why I ask for model and serial numbers, because, and again, I don't want to hear the excuse. If you're the one to hear the excuse that the technician didn't get it, you're the preventative maintenance supply, provider. You're supposed to be getting that asset information every single month that you go on site for a PM. That should be in your records.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was a PM manager prior to coming here. And my saying, which is very close to what you just said, which I haven't heard before because I'm doing the facility management role, is if you can't prove it, you didn't do it. And that was in reference to photos because, if you're saying you changed the filters, you changed the belt. Like I got down to where every filter needed a date and your initials. Every belt needed a wax. All my technicians had a wax pen and they would write the date actually on the belt and it would stay on there. And and that comes from what? From people not doing their job and then us having egg on our face after we charged 8 hours for a job and to find out some of it wasn't completed. So it just got down to the point where I need a before and after of everything. So as a technician, to practice what I preach, I've always taken before and after photos. I probably have over 100,000 photos of before, during, and after since I was in tech school, for the last decade or so. So yeah, those are best practices. I definitely wanted to share it from your point of view and whatnot. And Pat, you have any best practices from a service company to, for us RFMs and RFMs out there and things that we could help make your life easier?
No, if you have questions, just reach out. Some managers like to hire technicians from this, facilities people or whatnot. But, as a manager of as a manager of a service company, they need to make sure their guys are aware that, hey, proper notes, proper documentation, pictures, videos, whatever you got to do to justify it. We're huge about notes on this show. All three of us like to write, detailed descriptions on what we found, who we talked to, resolutions, that kind of stuff. So if a service manager can get their technicians in line, I think that's going to help everybody out in the long run.
Awesome.
I actually, my previous company, what I started to do was when preventative maintenances for HVAC units were done, I would have the technicians have the manager on duty be the one to sign the filters as well. So when they pulled the filter, and the manager was like, well, it hasn't been changed in X amount of time. There's the date and there's their signature. So they can't even deny that it didn't get done because it's their signature.
I've met some managers that want nothing to do with getting up on a roof. They might have to sign those and then bring them up.
I have made bring it down, take the filter, bring it to the location. I'm like, just have them quickly sign it, have them date it, you sign it, you date it, and pop it in. I do that with my water heaters too. I'll make the technicians pop the date on the water outside the water heaters. So when we can walk in and they can know.
I see that on water heaters all over the place. Dates written on the outside of them real big. The company installed them in a date. And I'm like, and I noticed that. And that makes sense now that you say it. I'm like, oh, it's facilities manager. Like, hey, write that on there. That way they know. I mean, a water heater is a high use thing in a commercial kitchen application because you're running dishes, so that thing's running nonstop. And I'm not sure what you guys get out of life expectancy, but I can imagine it's a lot shorter than the one at my house.
Yeah, and I actually did work for a client that because they use them so frequently, they actually put their entire fleet on a preventative maintenance water heater program. They replaced the 100-gallon water heaters every 5 years.
I can see that. Get ahead of it. That way it doesn't become an issue. Because in a restaurant or if you lose a hot water heater, you're down. Like you can't be open. It's a board of health violation. You can't wash your hands. You can't sanitize your dishes. You're done. You get to shut the door.
It's done. You can't open. And in that something as silly as a water heater, if it could be avoided, do it.
That makes sense.
I just learned about that. I have a fellow RFM who I consider, he's my senior, so he coaches me on things, and he put me onto the whole water heater PMs. I'm just like, that's a thing. That makes sense. I just didn't know about that.
So
yeah, I'm a PM. I'm pro PM, man. If I would PM everything in my restaurants, if I could, like everything, like the dining room, do a dining room PM. I am a big person. Because people don't realize, like, I think that's one of the things is restaurateurs, and I dealt with this in my past life, they would fight the PMs. And then when something would go terribly wrong, they would complain. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, you didn't have a preventative maintenance. This could have been prevented. So
preventative.
Yeah. That's why it's preventative maintenance.
Or planned,
so
yes.
If I can do PMs on do it, I would be like the pro PM person. Man, I'm not pro PM FM.
There is no worse feeling as a manager, I can imagine, than not doing a PM and then paying me to come out on a Friday night, Saturday morning, and all I do is go in there and clean a coil and the temperature starts dropping. There's got to be no worse feeling. Like, you could have spent the money you paid for me to come out in overtime to do this, you could have had a quarterly PM. You could have done it. It's just been done.
Done.
Or caught this. And then, they don't understand that by the time that coil gets so packed that it's affecting how that unit cools, you're just killing that compressor, you're killing the oil, you're clogging up cap tubes, you're damaging the equipment. So it goes a long way, PM does.
Especially locations that have, what is it, those cottonwood trees that the cottonwood gets in or ones that are close to the water, with that, on both the east and the west coast with the salt water. And I don't think people really and that's another thing. Restaurateurs don't understand how much the environment can affect their outside equipment.
Nice. So you do more than just facilities, I heard. You do a couple other things. You want to talk about those?
I do. So I am I'm also involved in the Restaurant Facility Management Association. I joined in 2022 when I first moved to the client side of things. I attended my first conference and I loved it. I ended up joining the membership committee, and made myself be like a mentor for new members that join. I reach out to them and follow up with them, like Jason. And I also was the co-chair of the Females in Facilities group last year. And I actually presented with my co-chair last year at the conference. We did a riff talk on the importance of our Females in Facilities group and everything that we talk about, and the importance of that group, and knowing that it's a safe space for women to ask silly questions that might seem silly to a male. Perfect example, what kind of shoes do you wear on a construction site? Because a lot of times for a facility manager, you think like you're corporate. Technically, you're corporate. So you think that you have to go into these locations and you have to be all dressed up. And you're a facility manager. I, most of the time, will go into my locations in leggings or stretch jeans and non-slip sneakers now because, again, like I said earlier in the show, I was on my hands and knees cleaning a filter. So, it's definitely something that I'm involved in, and I'm super excited this year. So every year prior to the conference really kicking off, we have the Connection Cafe. And what that is that's for all of our new members to kind of come and meet experienced members and hear their feedback and their take on the show and the conference and what they get out of it every year. And this year was actually asked to be part of that and, share my experience and share how long I've been going. And I'm super, super excited about that. I am in the process of also studying for my CRFP, which is my Certified Restaurant Facility Professional designation. I have been studying for it for so long. And it's actually becoming easier. So I think within the next few months, I finally will be able to take my certification and get those fancy 4 letters after my name, which makes me super excited because I've been trying to go for it for a while.
Nice.
Sweet. So I'm not going to keep you any longer, but I really appreciate you coming on and telling, the side that a lot of people don't understand when it comes to facilities managers. You have a job to do. You're protecting your clients, your customers, your restaurateurs. You're protecting their investment and your company's investment. But you're also making sure, they're doing the right thing. It's not just, them calling in and complaining when something's broke, but you're also, trying to educate them that, you have a part in this as well. You can't just expect them to drop everything and come right away. So it's really cool that, you both are working, both sides of it. It's not just, jumping and screaming at companies like me to run out here and fix this. It's, what could we have done differently to prevent this and keep this from happening? So it's really refreshing to see that, companies are out there doing the right thing and trying to educate their people as well.
Absolutely. And I can't thank you guys enough for asking me to be on the show. It definitely, again, when I told my dad that I was going to be on, he was so excited. And he's like, well, can I watch it on TV? How do I get this? And I'm like, no, Dad, you can listen to it on your phone. And he's like, you'll show me how to do that, right? Because I'm going to listen to the whole thing. I might not understand it, but I'm going to listen to it. So I know the two of them are going to be super, super proud. And I just can't thank you guys enough for giving me this opportunity to have my dad now tell people that I'm not only just a facility man, one podcast. That doesn't mean anything.
Well, thank you for accepting. It was short notice, and I was just like, oh, I'll ask. Pat was asking if we were wanted to line anyone up, and I was just like, well, I think I can ask somebody. And and you were the first person I thought of because I know we have things coming up and whatnot. So I'm thank you for coming on. And again, the purpose of this show is to just promote. It's the foundation of this is hospitality, and we fix commercial equipment, cooking equipment. But there's so many aspects to that pie, So and in regards to what Pat was just saying, where he finds it cool that we don't just hold, our restaurateurs, which that's a new word to me. I thought it was a Jersey thing, and the providers, to account, because I think honestly, as liaisons, which my senior Robbie says, we're here to liaison, but we're also here to maintain a healthy relationship, because where a store doesn't understand why a restaurant isn't a provider just isn't available right now to just come out here, that's where we have to, be the voice of reason and just help them understand. People need to understand that honestly, there is more pie than there are people to eat it. And what that means is that there is more facilities work than there are skilled technicians and people to service. So it's a lot of us and not a lot of them. So where we can be upset and we're mad at them, at the end of the day, we still need them, but at the same time, they need us. So it's our job to maintain a healthy relationship and try to help liaise between the providers and the RFMs.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a tough problem to have, but again, a lot of times it's us being the bigger person. As much as we want to get mad at the technicians for not being able to get out fast enough, we're not their only client. We're not the only stop that they have. And we have to be the bigger person and thank them that they can come out whenever they can.
Nice. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and I won't keep you any longer. I want to thank you for taking time to come and talk about, what you guys do. You guys both play a great role in this industry, and I appreciate it.
So Taylor, where can people find you? What platforms are you comfortable with giving out in your handles, if any?
I am on LinkedIn for sure. LinkedIn is my biggest one. Just search Taylor Lomberk and I will come right up. My Instagram and my Facebook are personal, but I post pictures of my dogs and my food and all of the vacations because my husband and I are addicted to cruises. I was on one in the beginning of this month. I'm going on one in the beginning of March.
Nice.
It's lots of baby stuff now that we have our first son. I'm expecting my first son in July. So it's baby stuff, but you can absolutely find me on there. And honestly, you'll see some of my sarcastic Long Island accent come out there. So friend me up if you want to just chat business or just chat in general. Reach out. I'm always available.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys. Have a good night. If you guys would, please consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing the podcast. It really helps us grow and helps us know which direction to move in. Also, if you have any suggestions for guests, please email me at commercialkitchenchronicles@gmail.com. Or if you want to be a guest, email me. Love to have you guys on. Thanks a lot. See you next week.